Fundamental and realized niche. The fundamental niche of an organism is the total range of environmental conditions where it can survive and reproduce in the absence of other species. The realized niche is the actual range of environmental conditions where it survives and reproduces in the presence of another species. The realized niche is usually smaller than the fundamental niche due to competition and other biotic factors. Then next topic, resource partitioning. When two or more species use the same resource, they may evolve to partition or divide the resource in a way that minimizes competition. For example, different species of birds may feed on different parts of a tree or use different feeding techniques to avoid competition. Then, character displacement. When two species with similar niches coexist, they may evolve to become more different in their morphology or behavior, a process known as character displacement. This reduces competition and allows the species to coexist in the same habitat. Understanding the concept of habitat and niche is important for studying the ecology of organisms and their interactions with each other and their environment. It can also help in understanding the impact of environmental changes on ecosystems and species living in them. Population ecology. So, next topic, population ecology and related topics. So, population ecology is the study of the patterns and processes that influence the abundance, distribution, and dynamics of populations of organisms. This branch of ecology is concerned with understanding how and why the size and structure of populations change over time and how populations interact with their biotic and abiotic environments. So, characteristics of a population. A population is a group of individuals of the same species that occupy a particular area at the same time. Populations can be characterized by their size, density, dispersion, age, structure, sex ratio, and genetic composition. Population growth curves. The rate at which populations grow can be described by a population growth curve, which can be either exponential or logistic. An exponential growth curve shows how a population would grow in the absence of limiting factors, while a logistic growth curve takes into account the effects of limiting factors such as food availability, predation, and diseases. Population regulation. Populations are regulated by a variety of factors, including density-dependent factors such as competition, predation, and diseases, as well as diversity-independent factors such as weather events and natural disasters. So, life history strategies. Different species exhibit different life history strategies, which are shaped by environmental conditions and trade-offs between growth, reproduction, and survival. R-selected species have a high reproductive rate and short lifespan, while K-selected species have a lower reproductive rate and longer lifespan. Metapopulation dynamics. A metapopulation is a group of spatially separated populations that are connected by occasional dispersal. The dynamics of metapopulations are influenced by the size, connectivity, and stability of individual populations as well as the rates of migration and extinction. Understanding the concepts of population ecology. Once again, let's read what is metapopulation. Metapopulation dynamics. A metapopulation is a group of spatially separated populations that are connected by occasional dispersal. The dynamics of metapopulations are influenced by the size, connectivity, and stability of individual populations as well as the rates of migration and extinction. So, understanding the concepts of population ecology is important for managing and conserving populations of wild species as well as for predicting the consequences of environmental changes on populations of both wild and domesticated organisms. So, species interactions. Next topic. Species interaction play a vital role in shaping ecosystems and are critical to understanding how organisms interact with each other and with their environment. There are various types of species interactions including interspecific competition, herbivory, carnivory, pollination, and symbiosis. So, interspecific competition refers to the competition between different species or limited resources such as food, water, and shelter. This competition can occur between individuals of the same or different species. For example, lions and hyenas may compete for prey in the same ecosystem. So, herbivory involves the consumption of plant materials by herbivores, which may have significant effects on plant populations and community structure. For example, grazing by herbivores such as cattle, sheep, and goats can have a significant impact on the growth and distribution of vegetation on inland ecosystems. Carnivory is the consumption of animal material by carnivores. It plays a critical role in shaping predator-prey relationships and maintaining ecological balance. For example, predators such as wolves and coyotes help to control populations of herbivores such as deer and elk, which in turn affects the growth and distribution of plant populations. So pollination involves the transfer of pollen from the male reproductive organs to the female reproductive organs of flowering plants, which is essential for the reproduction and survival of many plant species. For example, bees and butterflies are important pollinators of many flowering plants. Symbiosis is a close and often long-term interaction between different species that may be mutually beneficial, harmful, or neutral. There are three types of symbiotic relationships like mutualism, commensalism, and parasitism. For example, the relationship between clownfish and sea anemones is an example of mutualism, and the clownfish receives protection from predator by living among the tentacles of the sea anemone, while the anemone benefits from the clownfish's waste products and protection from some predators. So, understanding this species interactions is crucial for effective ecosystem management and conservation. They play an important role in maintaining biodiversity and ecosystem functioning and can have significant impacts on human well-being and economics. Next, community ecology topics. So, community ecology is the study of the organization and functioning of ecological communities, which consist of different populations of species living and interacting within a defined area. It encompasses a range of topics from the distribution and abundance of species to the dynamics of species interactions and the functioning of ecosystems. So, natural communities and the nature of communities. Community is a group of interacting species that occur together in a particular area. Communities can vary in size, structure, and complexity and can be characterized by their species richness, species diversity, and species composition. Communities can be influenced by a variety of factors, including biotic interactions like abiotic. Next, abiotic factors like climate, soil, water, and disturbance, events like fire and flooding, and historical factors like colonization and extinction. Then, community structure and attributes. The structure of a community refers to the number and relative abundance of different species as well as the patterns of interactions among them. Community attributes can include measures of species diversity such as species richness, the number of species present, and species richness and species evenness, the relative abundance of each species. So, communities can also be classified based on their trophic structure with different trophic levels like producers, consumers, and decomposers, contributing to energy flow and nutrient cycling within the ecosystem. So, levels of species diversity and its measurement. Species diversity is the variety of different species that are present in a particular area. So, diversity can be measured at different levels, including alpha diversity, diversity within a single habitat, beta diversity, like diversity among different habitats within a region, and gamma diversity, diversity across an entire region. So, different measures of diversity include species richness, the number of species present, species evenness, the relative abundance of each species, and the Shannon index, which incorporates both richness and evenness. Then edges and ecotones. An edge is the transition zone between two different habitats such as a forest and a grassland. Edges can have distinct ecological characterizations including changes in species composition, microclimate, and disturbance regimes. Then ecotones are a broader transition. Sorry for the mispronounced words. I'm sorry. Ecotones are broader transition zones between two different ecosystems where the interaction between species from each ecosystem can lead to unique community dynamics and patterns of biodiversity. So, overall, community ecology is important for understanding the relationships and interactions between species in ecological communities as well as the processes that maintain biodiversity and ecosystem function. So, next topic, ecological succession. Ecological succession refers to the sequential changes in the composition of species that occur over time in a particular ecosystem. There are two main types of ecological succession, like primary succession and secondary succession. So, primary succession occurs in a newly formed or completely barren ecosystem where no life previously existed, such as a volcanic island or glacial retreat. In primary succession, the first organism to colonize the area are usually lichens or mosses, which gradually change the environment by breaking down rocks and creating soil. As the soil develops, other species such as grasses, shrubs, and eventually trees can colonize the area, leading to a more complex community. The final stage of primary succession is the climax community, which is a stable, self-sustaining community of plants and animals that is characteristic of the region. So, secondary succession occurs in an area where an existing community has been disturbed or destroyed, such as after a forest fire or human disturbance like clear cutting. The secondary succession, the process begins in the establishment of herbaceous plants and shrubs, followed by the return of small trees and eventually the original tree species if they are able to recognize the area. The mechanisms driving succession are complex and include changes in soil nutrients, physical structure, and biotic interactions. For example, early colonizers may create a more favorable environment for later colonizers for improving soil quality and providing shelter. As succession progresses, the environmental conditions may become less favorable for some species, leading to their decline or replacement by other species better adapted to the changing conditions. So, succession is important for the restoration and management of disturbed ecosystems. Understanding the mechanisms of succession can help ecologists and ethologists develop effective strategies for managing ecosystems, such as selective removal of invasive species to facilitate the return of native species or creating disturbances that mimic natural processes to promote a particular successional stage. Next, ecosystem ecology, ecosystem related topics. Ecosystem ecology is the study of how organisms interact with each other and with their environment in a given ecosystem. This includes the structure, function, and dynamics of ecosystem as well as their response to disturbances and changes. Then ecosystem structure. Ecosystem structure refers to the physical and biological components of an ecosystem, including the distribution and abundance of organisms, the physical and chemical properties of the environment, and the flow of energy and materials through the ecosystem. It includes both the biotic and the abiotic components of the ecosystem. The structure of the ecosystem can vary depending on the type of ecosystem and the geographic region in which it is located. Then when we learn about ecosystem function, we can see ecosystem function refers to the process that occur within an ecosystem, including energy flow, nutrient cycling, and the exchange of gases between the ecosystem and atmosphere. This process are driven by the interactions between biotic and abiotic components of the ecosystem. So ecosystem function is closely linked to ecosystem structure, and changes in one can affect the other. Next, energy flow and mineral cycling. Energy flows through an ecosystem in a one-way direction from producers like plants and other autotrophs to consumers like herbivores and carnivores and omnivores and decomposers, and eventually to decomposers like bacteria and fungi. So energy is lost at each trophic level as heat, and only a small percent is passed to the next level. Nutrients, on the other hand, are cycled through the ecosystem. The three main nutrient cycles are the carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, and phosphorus cycle. These cycles involve the uptake and release of nutrients by organisms in the ecosystem, as well as the movement of nutrients between the biotic and abiotic components of the ecosystem. Next, primary production refers to the amount of organic matter or biomass produced by autotrophs in an ecosystem, typically measured in terms of carbon fixation through photosynthesis. This biomass is then available as food for heterotrophs in the ecosystem. So decomposition is the breakdown of organic matter by bacteria and fungi, which releases nutrients back into the ecosystem for reuse. So Indian ecosystem. India is a vast country with diverse ecosystems including forest, grassland, freshwater, marine, and estuarine ecosystems. Each ecosystem has unique characteristics in terms of structure, function, and biodiversity. For example, the tropical forests of India are known for their high levels of species diversity and endemism, while the freshwater ecosystems of the country are under threat from pollution and habitat destruction. So, understanding ecosystem structure and function is important for managing and conserving ecosystems as well as for predicting and mitigating the impacts of environmental changes such as climate change and habitat loss. So, next topic, biogeography. Major terrestrial biomes and theory of biogeography in island biogeography. So biogeography is the study of the distribution of species and ecosystems across the planet. It is concerned with understanding the spatial patterns and processes that shape the distribution of biodiversity. In this field of study, there are three main areas of focus like historical biogeography, ecological biogeography, and conservation biogeography. So major terrestrial biomes refer to the large-scale natural communities of plants, animals, and other organisms that are adapted to the physical and climate conditions of a particular region. Some of the major terrestrial biomes include tundra region. This biome is characterized by low temperatures, short growing seasons, and permafrost or frost-covered soil. And vegetation is most likely limited to low growing plants like lichens and mosses, and herbivores like caribou and musk oxen are adapted to this harsh environment. Next, taiga, also known as the boreal forest, is a biome which is dominated by coniferous trees and is found in high latitude regions of the northern hemisphere. Animals like moose, lynx, and wolves are adapted to these cold and snowy conditions of the taiga. Then, temperate deciduous forest. This biome is characterized by moderate temperature and a mix of deciduous trees like oaks and maples. Many mammals like deer and bears are adapted to this biome. Then, grassland. This biome is characterized by grasses and other herbaceous plants and is found in regions with moderate rainfall. Then, grazing animals like bison and pronghorns are adapted to this biome. Then, desert. This biome is characterized by low rainfall and high temperature. Animals like camels and snakes are adapted to this harsh environment. Then, tropical rainforest. This biome is characterized by high temperature and rainfall and is home to a vast array of plant and animal species, including monkeys, parrots, and snakes. So, the theory of island biogeography states that the number of species on an island is determined by a balance between the rate of colonization and the rate of extinction. Islands that are larger and closer to the mainland are predicted to have higher species diversity. So, islands that are larger and closer to the mainland are predicted to have higher species diversity, and that their abundance of organisms is directly proportional to the rate of colonization, and it's also related to the rate of extinction. Then, biogeographical zones of India refer to the 6 major regions of country that have distinct biotic and abiotic characteristics: the Himalayas, Indo-Gangetic Plain, a desert, semi-arid zone, Western Ghats, and Eastern Ghats. The zones are characterized by different vegetation types, climate, and animal species. For example, the Himalayas are home to alpine vegetation and species like the snow leopard, while the Western Ghats are known for its diverse tropical forests and endemic species like the lion-tailed macaque. Understanding these biogeographical zones are important for conservation planning and management in India. Next topic, applied ecology, environmental pollution and related topics. So, environmental pollution. Environmental pollution refers to the introduction of harmful substances into the environment that causes adverse effects in the living organisms and the natural world. These substances can come from human activities such as industrial processes, transportation, and agriculture. So, pollination can take many forms such as air pollution, water pollution, soil pollution, and noise pollution. And global environmental change. Global environmental change refers to the significant and persistent changes in the Earth's environment that results from human activities. These changes include climate change, loss of biodiversity, depletion of natural resources, and pollution. So, human interventions are many possible reasons for this. So, global environmental changes is driven by the rapid growth of human populations and the associated increase in energy consumption and industrial activity. Then, biodiversity. Biodiversity refers to the variety of life on Earth, including the number and variety of species, ecosystems, and genetic diversity within a species. So, biodiversity is important for ecosystem functioning and services such as air and water purification, nutrient cycling, and climate regulation. Biodiversity also has cultural and aesthetic value. So, biodiversity status monitoring and documentation. The status of biodiversity is assessed through monitoring and documentation of species and ecosystems. This includes monitoring the abundance and distribution of species, the health of ecosystems, and changes in genetic diversity. Monitoring can help identify areas of high biodiversity, areas that are under threat, and inform management strategies to conserve biodiversity. Next, drivers of biodiversity change. The major drivers of biodiversity change include habitat destruction, overexploitation of natural resources, pollution, invasive species, and the climate change. These drivers often interact, amplifying their impacts on biodiversity. Then, biodiversity management approaches. Biodiversity management approaches aim to conserve and enhance biodiversity while also promoting sustainable use of natural resources. This includes protected area management, ecosystem restoration, sustainable land use practices and reducing the impact of invasive species and pollution. So, biodiversity management approaches often involve collaboration between government agencies, non governmental organizations, and local communities. Next topic, conservation biology and related topics. So, conservation biology is a field that deals with the preservation and management of biodiversity, ecosystems, and natural resources. It involves the study of various factors affecting biodiversity and the development of strategies for its conservation. Some of the major principles of conservation biology include the maintenance of genetic diversity, ecosystem integrity, and the sustainable use of natural resources. So, habitat conservation. Let's learn about habitat conservation. This involves the protection and restoration of natural habitats such as forests, wetlands, and grasslands. This is important because habitats are essential for the survival of many species and are often threatened by human activities such as deforestation and urbanization. So, species conservation. Species conservation involves the protection of endangered species through measures such as captive breeding, habitat restoration, and anti poaching efforts. This is important because many species are facing extinction due to human activities such as hunting and habitat destruction. Then, ecosystem based conservation. This involves the protection of entire ecosystems and their ecological processes. This is important because ecosystems provide essential services such as clean air and water, nutrient cycling, and pollination. So, in India, there are several conservation management strategies that have been implemented to protect biodiversity. Some of these include Project Tiger. This is a conservation program launched in 1973 to protect tigers and their habitats. The program has been successful in increasing the number of tigers in India and has also led to the conservation of other species and their habitats. And biodiversity conservation spots like biosphere reserves. These are areas designed by UNESCO to conserve biological diversity and promote sustainable development. India has 18 biosphere reserves, each with its unique ecosystem and conservation challenges. So, wildlife sanctuaries and national parks. These are protected areas where wildlife is conserved and human activities are restricted. India has more than 500 wildlife sanctuaries and national parks, covering an area of around 5% of the country's total land area. So, in conclusion, conservation biology is an important field that helps in the preservation and management of biodiversity and natural resources. The implementation of effective conservation strategies is essential to ensure the survival of species and ecosystems and to maintain the ecological services they provide. Then, evolution and behavior. Emergence of evolutionary thoughts by Lamarck, Darwin, concepts of variation, adaptation, struggle, fitness of natural selection, Mendelism, and all those related topics. So, let's learn about it. Lamarck, Darwin, and Mendel are the major contributors to the emergence of evolutionary thought. Lamarck proposed a theory of inheritance of acquired characteristics, where an organism changes its characteristics during its lifetime due to the use or disuse of a particular trait, and these changes are passed on to its offspring. However, this theory has been discredited as it is not supported by empirical evidence. Then, Darwin's theory of evolution through natural selection proposed that variation exists within a population and those variations that are better suited for survival and reproduction are passed on to the next generation. This process of natural selection over long periods of time can result in the formation of new species. This theory was supported by a large amount of empirical evidence and it revolutionized the field of biology. So, Mendel's work on the principles of inheritance showed that traits are inherited in a predictable manner, and this laid the foundation for the understanding of genetics and how it plays a role in evolution. The evolutionary synthesis, also known as the modern synthesis, was emerging of the disciplines and principles of Darwin's theory of natural selection and Mendelian genetics. This synthesis provides a comprehensive framework for understanding evolution, and it incorporated new concepts such as genetic drift, genetic flow, and the role of mutation in evolution. Next, origin of cells and unicellular evolution, origin of basic biological molecules, and all those related topics. So, the origin of cells is an important event in the history of life on Earth. There are various theories about the origin of cells, but the most widely accepted one is the theory of chemical evolution proposed by Oparin and Haldane. According to this theory, the first living cells were formed by a gradual process of chemical evolution which involves the formation of organic molecules from inorganic precursors and their subsequent assembly into complex structures such as cells. Next topic we will be learning tomorrow. Thank you for listening.